services revenues and recurring revenue. That's the hope, Steve. That's the hope, right?
That is always the hope. And like, Mel, you got to think about this. Everything Apple does ties back to the iPhone. Sure, they sell gazillions of units every quarter, every year, but it's the stuff they layer on top of that that really has been driving growth for the company. So that means AirPods, that means Apple Watch, that means all the services businesses that we keep talking about, the App Store especially. That is where the growth is coming from. Now, how do we project that forward? And there are these reports coming out that this fall we're going to get that long-awaited so-called Apple Prime plan where you can sign up, get an iPhone every year, and then bundle in a bunch of those services. And I think that's where the next level of growth could really come from. It's not going to come from a headset necessarily. That's not going to be designed to replace the iPhone, just like the Apple Watch didn't replace the iPhone. It's really all centered around this iPhone ecosystem. Keep people locked in, keep people coming back and upgrading and paying for their subscription services, Mel.
Pete, you've been pretty outspoken in terms of your belief in the services revenue stream, which has been growing as a percent of total revenue. But there is some, concern that this is not recurring revenue and that they need the recurring revenue. So let's say they do the hardware subscription. That's recurring. Does that greatly improve your outlook for Apple?
Does it make the outlook for Apple look a little bit different, Mel? And I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough is the fact that how they've gotten into the financial world, how they've gotten into credit cards, and the strength that they've got there. They just continue to innovate. And I know Steve and I will go back and forth about that. But the innovation side of where they go in terms of what their exposure is, I think, is the key to why Apple's had so much success. They just continue to move forward, and whether or not they're looking at those AR glasses, whatever they're looking at, they seem to be on the cusp of something else that they can actually introduce to the customer. So I think there's still a lot of things into the future for Apple. I mean, there's always still the talk about some form of car. They don't even really need that. They've got CarPlay. They've got incredible exposure that way as well. So there's a lot of different ways that I think Apple can continue to make the future look a little bit brighter for themselves, as they go forward.
I mean, along that notion, Steve Kovac, of being the operating system for your life, what are some of the other opportunities that people are talking about where Apple can play? I mean, and what is their metaverse strategy, if anything?
The metaverse strategy, I mean, when Tim Cook was asked about metaverse, I think 2 quarters ago on the call, he just pointed to all their work in augmented reality, which means you hold up the phone and through the phone's camera, you can kind of see digital images on there. Is that the metaverse? Maybe. But the glasses would be where they really play in there. And keep in mind, metaverse kind of means different things to different people. But what we were just talking about, again, everything that was just mentioned, it all ties back to the iPhone, whether that's Apple Pay, whether that's CarPlay. Yeah, it's going in the car, but again, you need an iPhone to use all that. So all these experiences still rely heavily on the iPhone, and that's the point I want to drive home. And that's the point about Tim Cook's reign over the company since 2011, is how do we make the iPhone the center of your life and build an ecosystem of hardware and services around it? And that's where they're finding the success, Mel.
Yeah. Joe, Cook has been sort of criticized as not being transformational in terms of the kinds of products he brings to market. But maybe it doesn't need to do that at this point, at this stage in life, right? Of its life, I should say.
Well, he certainly has done an excellent job in terms of customer satisfaction, because that ecosystem has led to a historically high customer retention level. And what you'll see as we move into the fall with the introduction of the iPhone 14 is probably 20 to 30% of the instilled iPhone customer base is going to need to upgrade their phones because they haven't done it in the better part of the last 2 or 3 years. So I think that's going to be a positive condition. But I just think overall, you're owning the company for the balance sheet. You're owning the company for the degree of satisfaction that you're getting in utilizing the ecosystem. And it's reflected, as I said, in a remarkably high retention rate.
Steve, thanks for joining us. Steve Kovac. Thanks.